They say every grand love story has a twist, but no one expects it to end with heartbreak splashed across front pages. Anna Mendoza was an ordinary woman with extraordinary dreams until she fell in love with the dashing millionaire William Rutherford. Their whirlwind romance dazzled everyone. Charity galas, lavish vacations, and a fairy tale wedding that made headlines. But sometimes, even the most magical stories hide a dark undercurrent. When Anna discovered she was pregnant, William's reaction unleashed a chain of events no one saw coming. Betrayal, revenge, and a shocking exposé that rocked high society. This is the story of how one woman fought back. Anna Mendoza grew up in a modest neighborhood in Austin, Texas. She was the eldest daughter of a mechanic, Miguel Mendoza, and a hard-working nurse, Patricia Mendoza. Money was always tight, but love was abundant in their small home, painted a cheerful turquoise at the corner of Oakwood and Hampton Street. Anna learned early on the values of resilience and kindness. She was taught that hard work trumped shortcuts, and that love was a priceless gift rather than a commodity. Despite these humble beginnings, Anna stood out for her spirit and intelligence. She excelled in her studies, dreaming of one day becoming a journalist who could shed light on injustices around the world. While her ambitions soared, so did her curiosity about life beyond her humble neighborhood. She pored over newspapers and magazines, dissecting news stories and analyzing the high-profile lives of the wealthy. She read about entrepreneurs like Bill Gates and admired how philanthropic giving could change entire communities, yet was often frustrated that powerful people could also remain blind to the struggles of others. After graduating with top honors from a local high school, Anna managed to secure a scholarship to the University of Texas at Austin. She majored in communications and minored in political science, hoping to sharpen her writing skills and focus on global issues. During college, she volunteered at a local newspaper, the Austin Tribune, under the guidance of an old-school editor named Harriet Sullivan, who taught Anna to investigate thoroughly and write passionately. Anna's keen eye for detail and empathetic approach to storytelling gained her recognition. One fateful evening at a charity fundraiser for children's literacy, Anna caught the eye of William Rutherford, a charismatic millionaire investor originally from New York. William was in his late 30s and already known for his wide-ranging portfolio tech startups, real estate, sustainable energy. He was regularly photographed in the society pages, standing beside celebrities like Sofia Vergara and high-profile entrepreneurs at events in Manhattan and Los Angeles. Though unattached officially, the rumor mill frequently speculated about his love life. In person, William radiated the sophistication of old money, but had the hunger for risk, typical of self-made moguls. They locked eyes across the bustling fundraiser. Anna was there reporting for the college news section, taking pictures of the prominent philanthropists in attendance. William, fresh from a business trip to Hong Kong, was leaning casually against a marble pillar, swirling a glass of champagne. Sparks flared when he walked up to her, introduced himself with a smooth confidence, and offered to help sponsor the literacy campaign. Anna was taken aback by how gracious he seemed. He asked about her goals, her volunteer work, and her writing aspirations. That night, she wrote an article featuring William's contribution to the fundraiser. Little did she know her short piece would spark a chain of emails between them. He reached out to thank her for the flattering coverage. She demurred, noting it was just the facts. William, intrigued by her humility and intelligence, invited her out for coffee. Anna accepted partly out of curiosity, partly because his sophisticated presence was hard to ignore. Their coffee date at a trendy cafe off campus felt like the start of a fantasy. William asked about her background, her dreams, her family, and even her struggles. In turn, Anna learned about his early life. The Rutherfords had once been wealthy landowners, but after his father's series of poor investments, William had to rebuild the family's fortune practically from scratch. He was still deeply shaped by that fall from grace, driving him to fiercely safeguard his successes and carefully manage his public image. Soon, one coffee date turned into dinner dates, which turned into weekend trips. Anna felt she was living someone else's life, flying out to Miami on William's private jet, wearing designer dresses he'd insisted on gifting her, attending philanthropic gatherings in New York and London. Her parents were both proud and worried. They'd never seen Anna so happy yet, so far from home. Meanwhile, Anna found herself in the eye of a social hurricane. Paparazzi occasionally snapped pictures of her, and William gossip blogs wondered about the new mystery woman. Over time, though, she grew used to the media glare. After 2 breathtaking years together, William proposed on the steps of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. A string quartet played softly in the background, surrounded by discreet security to keep prying cameras away. Anna, shocked but overjoyed, said yes through tears of happiness. They were married 6 months later, in a grand ceremony at a historic estate in the Hamptons. The wedding photos made front-page news in society columns. The millionaire from New York weds the smart Texan journalist. Their first dance was to a live performance of At Last by Etta James's tribute singer. Their honeymoon in Bali was a swirl of rose petals, beach sunsets, and whispered promises of a bright future. For a time, life felt perfect. Anna had a husband who was wealthy, generous, and unbelievably romantic. She'd put her journalism career on temporary hold. At William's request, he insisted she take time to enjoy married life and offered to help her start her own investigative news website whenever she was ready. Love, lavish living, and laughter characterized their initial year of marriage. Yet beneath the glamour, a rift was forming. Anna noticed that William had a controlling streak. He began to question her interactions with male colleagues, criticized her for dressing down when she insisted on wearing comfortable clothes for errands, and discouraged her from pursuing anything that could cast negativity on his investments. She tried to brush these signs aside. After all, he was kind in many ways, and she still believed in his best intentions. Little did Anna know that the cracks in her dream marriage were only going to widen once she discovered she was pregnant, and that the child she carried would become the catalyst for heartbreak and revenge that no one could have predicted Anna had always wanted. A family growing up in a tight-knit household, she envisioned giving her own children the warmth and security she'd once had. Early one morning, after feeling a wave of constant nausea, she decided to pick up a pregnancy test from a pharmacy near their penthouse on 5th Avenue. She took the test in the lavish marble bathroom with trembling hands. 2 lines are positive. Her heart soared with joy, imagining telling William that they were about to be parents. Perhaps, she thought, a baby would bring them closer together. Lately, William's controlling behavior had escalated. He was checking her phone, questioning her every expense. She hoped the news of their child would soften his rough edges, remind him of what truly mattered, beyond wealth and reputation. That evening, she prepared a special dinner at their penthouse, her mother's recipe for chicken enchiladas, fresh guacamole, and a creamy flan for dessert. She was determined to create a warm setting to announce the joyous news. William arrived late, looking harried, a deep furrow in his brow. He barely acknowledged the table filled with her carefully prepared dishes. Anna tried to lighten the mood, guiding him to sit, pouring him a glass of wine, which he accepted absent-mindedly. Then, with a beaming smile, she told him, "William, I'm pregnant. We're having a baby." A long silence followed. William set down his wine and stared at her. Anna expected happiness, relief, anything but the coldness that settled over his features. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight. "Are you certain it's mine?" Anna felt like she'd been slapped. She stammered through confusion and hurt, reminding him that she'd been faithful. But William's eyes burned with suspicion. He muttered about the timing being far from ideal, about how the responsibilities of fatherhood could weigh heavily on his business dealings, about how he needed to be absolutely sure. Anna was stunned. This wasn't the man who had courted her so sweetly, who had claimed to love every part of her soul. In the days that followed, William's behavior grew increasingly distant and dismissive. He demanded a paternity test, subtly casting doubt on Anna's character. Heartbroken Anna agreed to the test, desperate to prove she was telling the truth and to salvage their relationship. The results, of course, showed William was the father, yet his relief was overshadowed by cool calculation rather than joy. Anna overheard hushed phone calls, snippets about prenuptial agreements, potential legal ramifications. Although they had signed a prenup, the baby introduced new elements that might complicate William's finances and public image. One evening he left for a business trip to Silicon Valley and never returned home. Days melted into weeks. Anna tried calling him, texting him, sending emails. His replies were curt and cold. She found out through a business news article that he had flown to London for a series of meetings with technology investors and had spent weekends hobnobbing with wealthy aristocrats in Monaco. All the while, Anna grew more anxious, battling morning sickness and heartbreak in their once cozy penthouse that now felt like a gilded cage. Harriet Sullivan, Anna's old mentor from the Austin Tribune, reached out to see how she was doing. Anna hesitated, but eventually confided that something was deeply wrong in her marriage. Harriet, protective as ever, urged her to not let William walk all over her. Harriet also reminded Anna that her investigative talents could be harnessed to uncover truths even within her personal life. More than once, Harriet said, "Don't forget you have the heart of a reporter. Use it if you need to." One day, Anna woke up and found a note on the dining room table, presumably delivered by one of William's staff in the early morning hours. The message was brief and devastating. William was ending their marriage. He demanded she move out of the penthouse. He wanted no further obligations toward her, except for a financial settlement that his lawyer would draft. Anna felt her entire body go numb, tears streaming down her cheeks as she read the letter. She was 4 months pregnant, exhausted, and tossed aside like an inconvenient piece of baggage. Broken but not beaten, Anna packed her belongings. She left the penthouse that same day, ignoring the sympathetic looks from the staff who had come to care for her. With nowhere else to go in New York, she booked a flight home to Austin. Her father Miguel picked her up from the airport, eyes brimming with concern when he saw his daughter pale and trembling. Though she tried to hold back tears the moment she collapsed into his arms, her anguish poured out. There in her childhood bedroom, Anna clutched her belly and resolved to protect her unborn child from William's cruelty. She also felt an ember of anger spark within her. For the first time, Anna found herself wondering if William had secrets, dark ones, and whether she had been chosen for his agenda rather than for love. In the weeks following her return to Austin, Anna wrestled with heartbreak, embarrassment, and fear about the future. She wanted to believe that William's abandonment was just a temporary lapse in judgment. But her calls and messages continued to go unanswered. His lawyer, a polished man named Maxwell Carmichael, reached out instead with a generous settlement offer and a confidentiality agreement. Anna was shocked by the coldness of it all. She was supposed to hush up her entire relationship, accept a payout, and vanish from William's life. Furious, she refused to sign immediately. Time slowed down in that painful limbo. Her belly grew rounder, a daily reminder of the life inside her, and the father who wanted nothing to do with them. Her parents, though supportive, were worried about finances. Patricia had just been through a health scare and was too weak to keep working. Double shifts, Miguel's mechanic shop needed urgent repairs and new equipment. Anna began to wonder if taking William's settlement might be the pragmatic move for the sake of her family and the baby. Yet a deeper instinct told her not to cave, that something about William's abrupt shift was more than just a selfish decision. There was something bigger beneath the surface. Determined to find answers, she contacted Harriet Sullivan again. Harriet visited Anna in Austin, taking her out for lunch at a cozy cafe, over steaming mugs of peppermint tea. Anna confided all the abrupt abandonment, the soulless note, the financial settlement, hush money. Harriet listened gravely, then offered a suggestion that would set Anna on the path of discovery. Investigate William's recent business dealings. Maybe his sudden decision to discard her had roots in hidden debts, shady partnerships, or an upcoming scandal that fatherhood would complicate. Energized by Harriet's idea, Anna began quietly digging. She scoured financial news articles, looking for clues about William Rutherford's ventures: Rutherford Real Estate Group, Rutherford Tech, Investments, Rutherford, Sustainable Energy. His empire seemed unstoppable. But then she stumbled on a line in a niche finance blog referencing Rutherford's questionable offshore accounts. A few more days of searching led her to a bigger puzzle. There were rumors that William had allegedly manipulated stock prices for one of his tech startups, WeConnect, by feeding false projections to investors. Officially, everything looked squeaky clean, but whispers in the finance community suggested otherwise. Anna also discovered an SEC inquiry had been launched quietly. No mainstream media source had covered it yet. A potential scandal of that magnitude could topple a man like William Rutherford. His image as a philanthropic sweetheart would be replaced by the label of a fraudster. Anna's journalistic instincts flared to life. Could William's decision to cut ties with her be part of a strategy to protect his empire? Perhaps he believed a pregnant wife, someone who might discover and reveal his secrets, was a liability. Or maybe he feared that if the scandal broke, she'd become an unwilling accomplice. Still, Anna needed more concrete evidence. She set up phone calls with ex-employees of Rutherford's companies, speaking under the guise of a journalist doing a feature. She reached out to old acquaintances in New York's philanthropic circles. She even ventured into the dark corners of online finance forums. Piece by piece, a disturbing picture emerged. William was rumored to be funneling investor money into personal projects, using shell companies registered in Caribbean havens to mask suspicious transactions. Though Anna lacked the smoking gun, the circumstantial evidence pointed to major financial misdeeds, and it was all hush-hush, probably because people feared William's litigious nature. Meanwhile, Anna had to face her personal challenges: doctor's appointments, the emotional toll of impending single motherhood, and the swirling confusion of heartbreak. Sleep grew elusive. She'd toss and turn in her childhood bed, glancing at her phone, hoping for a message from William that never came. Instead, Maxwell Carmichael's legal team kept sending her urgent requests to sign the settlement. They threatened that her refusal to comply would end in a drawn-out legal battle and zero support for the baby. Anna resolved that before she made any decision, she needed that smoking gun. She had to know the truth about William's underhanded dealings. If he was indeed committing financial crimes, she'd use that as leverage to ensure her child's future and reveal his true nature. If she discovered nothing, she'd sign the settlement, walk away, and pray for peace. The next day, she booked a flight to New York, telling her concerned parents that she needed just a few days to settle her business. Harriet agreed to meet her there. Donning a brave face and a trench coat that used to fit her better before pregnancy, Anna stepped back into the city that had once felt so glamorous, determined to uncover the truth about the man she had married. Anna checked into a modest hotel on the Lower East Side, far from the five-star accommodations she used to frequent with William. She used Harriet's press credentials to set up interviews under the pretext of writing a piece on philanthropy and tech entrepreneurs. Under that cover story, Anna managed to speak with lower-level employees in William's venture capital offices. Most were tight-lipped. William paid well, and loyalty ran deep. But a few discreetly hinted at suspicious transactions, though they were too scared to go on record. Desperate for more, Anna rummaged through corporate filings at the local business registries. Harriet helped cross-reference addresses and scanned through old newspaper archives for anything linking Rutherford's companies to known shell entities or past controversies. It was an uphill battle. William's legal team was adept at burying digital footprints, but Harriet had taught Anna the importance of patience in investigative work. If you keep searching, eventually a thread will appear. Their breakthrough came from an unlikely source, an accountant named Linda Farnsworth, who had once worked at Rutherford Tech Investments. Anna discovered Linda's name buried in a public lawsuit docket. She had sued Rutherford Tech for wrongful termination and settled out of court. After some coaxing, Linda agreed to meet Anna in a quiet bookstore cafe away from prying eyes. When Anna showed up, Linda looked nervous, glancing over her shoulder as if she expected to be followed. "It's not safe for me to talk about this," Linda whispered, her fingers trembling around a cup of chamomile tea. "I signed an NDA. I could lose everything if I reveal details." Anna leaned in, speaking softly, but with urgency. "I'm William's wife," she said, voice breaking. "He left me. I'm pregnant with his child, and I suspect he's involved in something illegal. I don't know what to do. Please, Linda. Anything you can tell me might help me protect my baby, protect myself." Seeing Anna's distress, Linda's expression softened. She began carefully explaining how, during her time at Rutherford Tech, she noticed large sums of money being transferred between several accounts that didn't match any official projects. She tried flagging it to her superiors, but they fired her under dubious circumstances. The settlement was quick and generous, provided she remained silent about her discoveries. Linda couldn't share documents; those were locked away. But the names of the suspicious accounts were forever etched in her memory. She scribbled a few cryptic references on a napkin: HT Holding, Nova Horizons, East Lake Consulting. Then she added, "They're all linked, different addresses, but all roads lead to a private trust in the Cayman Islands." An electric surge ran through Anna's veins. She now had a lead. If she could tie these shell companies directly to William and track the money trail, it could confirm his involvement in fraud or embezzlement. She thanked Linda profusely, promising to keep her name out of it. The accountant left quickly, her eyes filled with a mix of guilt and relief. Armed with these leads, Anna and Harriet dove back into research mode. They discovered that HT Holding had a small office address listed in Brooklyn, likely a front. Anna decided to check it out in person, though Harriet warned her to be cautious. One cold, drizzling morning, Anna took a taxi to the address, her heart pounding. The building was a run-down warehouse with no visible signage. She tried the door. It was locked. Peering through the dirty windows, she saw only dusty boxes and a reception desk stacked with unopened mail. Suddenly, a heavy-set man in a dark suit stepped out from behind the warehouse. "Can I help you?" he asked, voice gruff. Anna froze. She recognized him. He was one of William's security guards, often seen at social events. Her blood ran cold, murmuring an apology about being lost. She hurried away as quickly as she could, ignoring the guard's suspicious gaze. That moment cemented her fears William had layers of protection around his shady dealings, and if she dug too deep, she might be putting herself in danger. Returning to the hotel, she found Harriet waiting anxiously. Harriet's own research had yielded more references to shell entities linked to Rutherford's circle, though none directly named William. Still, it was enough for Anna to suspect that William was funneling money illegally. Harriet suggested they approach a major newspaper or an online investigative platform with what they had. But Anna wasn't ready. She needed a direct link, something that would unequivocally tie William to these accounts. Without that, it could be brushed off as rumors or personal vendettas. That night, Harriet left to meet a colleague, and Anna was alone in her hotel room. Half asleep, she heard her phone vibrate. The call was from an unknown number. A raspy voice hissed, "Stop poking your nose where it doesn't belong. Sign the settlement and walk away. You don't want to bring trouble on yourself or your baby." Before Anna could respond, the line went dead, shaken to her core. Anna realized the fight she was in was far more dangerous than she anticipated, but instead of scaring her off, it fueled her determination. She refused to be intimidated by shadowy threats. Memories of her father's advice floated back to her. Right is right, even if it's hard. You can't let fear control you. Besides, after everything William had done, Bonner wouldn't let him get away with hurting her, abandoning his child, and possibly defrauding countless investors. Her unborn baby deserved justice, and she intended to secure it. The following day, Harriet arranged for Anna to meet a trusted investigative journalist, Mark Underwood, who worked for a reputable national paper. Mark had reported on corporate fraud cases before including high-profile exposés that led to resignations and lawsuits over coffee. Anna laid out her findings and expressed her fear that she didn't yet have the definitive proof to implicate William Rutherford. She needed Mark's network resources and expertise to solidify the story. Mark was intrigued. He agreed that the thread linking William to the shell accounts was the story's linchpin. "We need actual transaction data or testimonies from insiders who can confirm Rutherford's direct involvement," he said, scanning through Anna's notes. "Otherwise, it's circumstantial." While Harriet believed Mark could be trusted, Anna felt torn. If they went public too soon, William's legal team would discredit her as a spiteful ex-wife. She also risked him shutting down any remaining leads. Mark, sensing her internal conflict, reassured her they'd keep everything confidential until they had a rock-solid case. "But we've got to move quickly," he warned. "Money flows in and out of these shells fast. If Rutherford knows we're close, he'll bury them over the next few days." Anna collaborated with Mark's newspaper's research team, cross-referencing data from corporate registries and banking disclosures. She noticed that Harriet was uncharacteristically silent sometimes, leaving for hours without explanation. Anna guessed Harriet might have her own methods for unearthing information. She also found herself wishing she could confide everything to her family, but she didn't want to burden her mother and father with fear for her safety. At 5 months pregnant, her body was going through changes that left her exhausted, but she pushed through, driven by a fierce love for her unborn child. While scanning an SEC filing late one evening at the newspaper's office, Anna felt a sudden sharp pain in her abdomen. Alarmed, she tried to breathe steadily, telling herself it was just stress. She ended up in the break room, hands shaking. Mark found her pale and sweating, insisting on driving her to the nearest hospital. After an anxious examination, the doctor assured her the baby was fine, but warned her about overexertion. "You must reduce stress," he stressed. "Your child's health depends on it." That night, lying in a hospital bed, Anna realized she was treading a dangerous line. Should she sign the settlement, vanish from William's world, and give her baby a secure, if silent, future? Or should she keep pushing for the truth and risk everything? Images of William's betrayal collided with thoughts of the baby's uncertain future if Anna didn't secure child support. Then she remembered her father's words and Harriet's unwavering support. "You have the heart of a reporter." Harriet had said Anna couldn't live with herself if she walked away from the biggest story of her life, a story that was also deeply personal. She checked out of the hospital the next morning, resolving to push forward, but promising herself she'd be mindful of her health. Upon returning to the newspaper's office, Mark greeted her with an urgent expression. "We got something," he said quietly. A confidential source had provided partial access to some offshore transaction records. Among them was a reference to a W. Rutherford initiating a transfer to Nova Horizons, one of the shell companies Linda had mentioned. This was the first direct naming of William in the context of an overseas funnel. Mark believed they could use it to pressure more sources to come forward. Excitement and dread warred inside Anna. They finally had a tangible link, but it was still incomplete, just a single transaction. Nonetheless, they decided to approach a forensic accountant to verify its authenticity. If it checked out, they would be one step closer to undeniable evidence. The forensic accountant confirmed that the transaction was real, but cautioned that William's legal team would attempt to discredit the leak or claim that the W. Rutherford on record was someone else. They needed a pattern of transactions, an unequivocal paper trail. Just as Anna was preparing for another day of digital sleuthing, she received a call from Harriet, who sounded breathless. "Meet me at the place you first started digging, the coffee shop on 42nd Street." Harriet said, confused but trusting her mentor. Anna hailed a cab. When she arrived, Harriet handed her a small manila envelope, eyes glittering with excitement. "I told you, I had a few tricks up my sleeve," Harriet said. Inside the envelope were copies of bank statements linking multiple transactions from William Rutherford's personal trust to Nova Horizons Eastlake Consulting and several other shell entities. There were time stamps, official bank stamps, enough to create a damning mosaic of fraudulent activity. Anna gaped at Harriet. How Harriet just gave a knowing smile. "I'm an old reporter with old connections. Let's just say, not everyone in Rutherford's circle is loyal to him anymore. Word travels fast when someone abandons a pregnant wife." Tears pricked Anna's eyes. She hugged Harriet, whispering her thanks. With these documents, they had everything needed to reveal William's crimes. Anna sat at the edge of the bed in Harriet's apartment, the morning light filtering through gauzy curtains. Her heart raced, though she tried to still it, with deep, steady breaths. On the table before her lay the manila envelope, simple, unassuming, yet filled with the power to tear down. An empire inside were irrefutable documents, bank statements, time-stamped transactions, the names of shell companies, all linked directly to William Rutherford. It was everything. Proof not only of his betrayal as a husband, but of his crimes as a public figure. Harriet's eyes sparkled with quiet pride as she poured Anna a cup of mint tea. "You ready?" she asked gently, placing the warm mug beside her. Anna's hand trembled slightly as she reached for it. The tea was meant to soothe, but nothing could dull the storm brewing inside her. "I don't know if I'm ready," Anna admitted, "but I know I have to do this." Mark Underwood, the seasoned journalist from the national paper, met them downstairs. His usual stoic expression had softened. He understood what this moment meant. They hailed a cab and rode in tense silence to the Midtown office of William's attorney, Maxwell Carmichael. The law firm was sleek, modern, sterile marble floors, glass walls, receptionists with emotionless smiles. As Anna stepped off the elevator, her baby shifted inside her, a small nudge against her ribs, as if reminding her, "I'm with you." Carmichael greeted them with that same smug, polished facade Anna remembered from earlier settlement talks. He gestured toward a conference room. "I assume this is about the settlement," he said smoothly, eyeing her belly as if it were an inconvenience Anna didn't answer. Instead, she opened the envelope and slid the documents across the table. For a moment, no one spoke. Carmichael's confident posture faltered as his eyes scanned the contents. The color drained from his face. His fingers twitched at the corner of the page, as if he wanted to tear the papers apart, but knew better. "Where did you get these?" he asked, voice low and sharp. Anna met his gaze, unwavering. "That's not your concern. What matters is that the truth is here, in black and white." Harriet leaned in her voice, calm but firm. "These documents have been independently verified by forensic accountants. Every stamp, every signature, every transfer is legitimate." Mark added, "Our legal team is prepared to move forward with publication, but in the spirit of journalistic ethics, we're offering William the chance to respond before the story goes live." For the first time, the smooth-talking attorney looked rattled. He leaned back in his chair, jaw clenched. "You realize the damage this will cause, not just to William, but to you as well. Public backlash, legal warfare. Is that really what you want?" Anna swallowed hard. Her chest ached not from fear, but from years of suppressed truth, of love given and abused. "What I want," she said slowly, "is for my child to grow up knowing that his mother didn't cower, that I stood up for what was right." Carmichael's tone changed. "Let's be civil. We can make this go away. How much do you want to keep this quiet?" The words hung in the air like poison. Anna blinked. For a moment, she was back in that penthouse kitchen, setting down a homemade meal, announcing her pregnancy, with hope in her voice. Only now did she fully see the rot that had existed behind the marble countertops and designer suits. "You're offering me a bribe," she said coldly, "to bury the truth, to protect a man who left his pregnant wife and stole from thousands of investors." Carmichael began to protest, but Mark pressed a button on a small recorder in his pocket. The red light blinked. "I wouldn't deny anything. You've said so far," he said, with a razor's edge in his tone. Harriet leaned forward. "You know what's coming, and you know your client can't escape it." Silence fell again. Carmichael's confidence had withered. He stood stiffly, straightened his tie. "You'll destroy William's entire legacy with this. He'll retaliate." "Don't think he won't." Anna stood too. Her belly led the way, round and full of promise. "He destroyed himself," she said. "This is just the world seeing him for who he really is." With that, they walked out. The doors to the firm clicked shut behind them, like the closing of a chapter. Outside, the city roared as usual. Horns, footsteps, the hum of people going about their lives. But for Anna, the world had gone silent for a moment. A great weight had lifted. The wind swept through the streets, and Anna inhaled deeply. Harriet placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You did it. She didn't feel victorious yet. That would come later. But in that instant, Anna felt something she hadn't in months, 3 days. That's how long it took for Anna's world to change again. On the morning of the 3rd day, Anna stood by the window in Harriet's apartment, holding a warm cup of chamomile tea, her fingers wrapped tightly around the ceramic, like it was the only thing grounding her. Outside New York pulsed with life. Unaware that it was about to be shaken by a story too big to ignore, the article went live at exactly 8:07 a.m. Charitable financier or fraudster allegations mount against millionaire investor William Rutherford. The headline was bold-centered. Impossible to look away from Mark Underwood's byline appeared just beneath it, alongside a small note with contributions from Harriet Sullivan and an anonymous source close to Rutherford. Anna's heart thudded as she scrolled. There it was, the full expose. Every detail, every transaction, every shell company, each account tied back to William. The documents Harriet had secured were featured as exhibits. But what drew Anna's eyes most were the words Mark had chosen to describe her. A woman betrayed, but not broken. A mother who refused to be silenced. A journalist who became the story she was born to write. By noon, the story had gone viral. National outlets reposted it. International ones translated it. Financial blogs tore through the implications. Pundits on cable news panels debated whether William Rutherford was merely ethically murky or a full-blown criminal, and social media. It exploded. Anna's face, captured in old paparazzi shots from galas and gala nights, smiling beside William in designer gowns, was now plastered across feeds with hashtags like pregnant whistleblower, Rutherford scandal, and, disturbingly, gold digger or heroine. I can't believe how fast this is moving, Anna whispered, setting down her phone, hands trembling. Harriet turned from the kitchen, a pot of soup bubbling behind her. You lit the match, sweetheart. Now watch the fire burn. But the fire didn't burn evenly. William's response was swift and brutal. By evening, his PR machine had kicked into full gear. Polished statements were released, denying everything. The documents were fabricated. The accusations, vindictive and orchestrated. And Anna. According to them, she was a scorned, unstable woman, attempting to extort a respectable businessman. They went further. They leaked private details of Anna's past. Her college essays, her social media posts from years ago, even misrepresented her academic work to imply she had radical views. The same woman who once posed beside William at galas was now being painted as a manipulative social climber. The smear campaign hit hard. Trolls flooded Anna's inbox. Comments appeared under every post about the article. Some sympathetic, others venomous. You trapped him with that baby. She was always after his money. Typical journalist lies for fame. Anna tried to block it out. She kept reminding herself. This was about the truth, about justice, about Matteo. But when her father called from Austin, his voice shaking, she nearly broke Anna. There's reporters outside the shop. They're asking questions, shoving cameras in my face. Your mother's not doing well. Her blood pressure's high. I'm so sorry, Dad. She choked out. Miguel's voice softened. You did the right thing, mija. But it's going to be a rough storm. You hold on, you hear me? You hold on for that baby. The next day, things escalated again. William filed a defamation lawsuit, not just against the newspaper or Mark, but against Harriet and even Anna herself. He also requested a restraining order, accusing Anna of harassment. The irony nearly made her laugh, if it didn't hurt so much. At that point, Anna moved in full-time with Harriet for safety. Paparazzi lingered outside. Strangers took photos of her baby bump like it was tabloid gold. She tried to keep calm, to stay grounded. She began talking to her baby, more as if the tiny heartbeat within her could keep her own steady. "You're not just my reason to keep going," she whispered one night as she lay awake. "You're my proof that love still means something." And then, amid the chaos, came a call. A woman's voice, crisp and clear. Anna Mendoza. "My name is Dr. Cynthia Rollins. Harriet gave me your information. I'm an OB-GYN, and I'd like to offer you prenatal care, free of charge." Anna blinked, tears already gathering. Why, she asked, voice cracking. "Because what you're doing takes more strength than most people ever have, and I think you and your baby deserve someone in your corner." That night, Anna wept, not from fear or anger, but from gratitude. Weeks passed, and with every day, William's foundation crumbled more. Investors began pulling out. His board members resigned. And then came the moment Anna didn't expect. So soon, a federal investigation was announced. The charges were real. The government was watching. Still, it wasn't over. One night, unable to sleep, Anna scrolled social media. Despite Harriet's warning, a private message popped up. A user with no profile picture, no real name. "I used to work for Rutherford. I have more proof." Emails direct from him. He knew what he was doing. Anna's fingers hovered over the keyboard. A trap. "A lifeline with caution," she replied. Hours later, Mark had the emails, messages from William himself, discussing SEC regulations, skirting legal boundaries, laughing off accountability. That was the final crack. William's attorney, Maxwell Carmichael, was rumored to have stepped down. The man who once sneered across polished conference tables now disappeared from the spotlight altogether. But Anna, she stood firm. She was no longer the dumped wife. She was the woman who exposed a lie too big to ignore, who stood tall through the firestorm, who carried not just a child, but the truth. And through it all, Matteo kicked in her belly, like he knew his mother had won the first of many battles for them both. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and cold resolve. Anna sat quietly at the plaintiff's table, 8 months pregnant, and wrapped in a navy blue maternity dress that hugged her belly like armor. Her hands rested protectively atop the swell of her child fingers, intertwined in a gentle prayer for strength. Around her, the air was heavy with anticipation. Journalists scribbling in notepads, murmurs from the public gallery, the low hum of microphones being tested. Across the room sat William Rutherford. Gone was the charismatic mogul, in tailored suits and confident smirks. His skin looked drawn, his eyes sunken. He wore a dark suit that seemed to hang loose on him, as if he were shrinking under the weight of the allegations. When their eyes met just for a heartbeat, Anna saw not the man who once whispered vows beneath chandeliers, but a stranger consumed by self-preservation. The trial had officially begun. A grand jury had indicted William on multiple counts: wire fraud, securities, violations, money laundering. The culmination of months of investigation, whistleblower accounts, forensic documentation, and Anna's courage. She had been subpoenaed to testify. As she made her way to the witness stand, each step felt like a mile. The courtroom fell silent, all eyes on the woman who had become a symbol of betrayal, of resilience, of justice. The bailiff held out a Bible. Anna placed her hand atop it, swore the oath, and sat. Her voice, though soft, carried weight. She told the truth, not just the facts, but the emotional toll. How William had walked out without warning. How she had been left to navigate pregnancy alone. How suspicion turned into discovery. And how she unearthed secrets meant to stay buried. Her hands trembled at times, her throat caught, but she never faltered. "I didn't set out to ruin anyone," she said, glancing toward the jury. "I just wanted to understand why someone I loved turned so cold. I didn't expect to find crime. But once I did, I couldn't look away." William sat motionless, eyes burning holes through the floor. Then came the cross-examination. His defense attorney, sharp and theatrical, attempted to flip the narrative. He painted Anna as vengeful, manipulative, driven by jealousy. He questioned her motives, her character, even her credibility as a journalist. "Isn't it true," he sneered, "that you were desperate for attention, that your investigation was really just an elaborate act of revenge?" Anna looked at the attorney, then to the jury. "No," she said simply. "What I was desperate for was the truth. For my child, for the people William hurt." Her composure silenced the room. Linda Farnsworth, the former accountant, who had first shared the names of the shell companies, also took the stand. Her voice quivered, but her testimony was devastating. She confirmed the suspicious money transfers, the internal warnings, ignored the fear of retaliation. Other former employees testified anonymously, describing a culture of secrecy and intimidation. The prosecution laid out its case with methodical precision: bank records, email chains, witness statements. Piece by piece, the image of William Rutherford as a titan of industry crumbled. The jury could see what Anna had seen long ago. A man so obsessed with power, he'd risk everything, including a family, to preserve it. During breaks, Anna stepped outside to breathe. Journalists hounded her for quotes, but she said little. Her thoughts were focused inward on the life growing inside her. At night, she curled up in Harriet's guest room, Matteo kicking gently as if to remind her, "We're almost through." Then came the verdict. The jury deliberated for just under 4 hours. Anna sat holding Harriet's hand, her heart pounding so loudly she almost didn't hear the foreperson speak. Guilty. On multiple counts. William didn't speak, didn't flinch, but Anna saw his jaw twitch, his nostrils flare. He looked less like a man facing justice and more like a cornered animal, realizing the trap had finally sprung shut. Tears welled in Anna's eyes, not out of joy or triumph, but something deeper, a quiet grief. This wasn't just the end of a trial, it was the death of an illusion. The man she once thought she loved no longer existed. Maybe he never had. Outside the courthouse, reporters flooded forward, flashbulbs, microphones, questions shouted from every direction. Anna stepped up to the podium. Her voice again was soft but firm. "I didn't choose this path, but I chose not to stay silent. This case was never just about me. It was about truth, accountability, and what happens when powerful people think they're untouchable. I'm grateful the justice system worked, and now I'm going home to prepare for the most important role of my life, being a mother." She turned her chin high as Harriet and Mark flanked her protectively. Later that evening, Anna watched the news in silence. Pregnant wife topples tycoon. The headlines read, her face now, familiar to millions, flickered across the screen. But the woman looking back wasn't the same girl who once swooned in a private jet, dressed in borrowed diamonds. No, this woman was steel and warmth, fire and grace, The media attention was overwhelming, but Anna managed it on her own terms. She granted 2 interviews, one with a women's magazine, one with a major network, and in both she spoke not of revenge, but of responsibility. "I just want my son to grow up in a world where truth still matters," she said. And though critics still lingered in comment sections, their voices were now drowned by the flood of support letters, emails, care packages from strangers who saw her not as a scandal, but as a symbol of hope. With the child support and damages enforced by the court, Anna set up a modest trust fund for Matteo. She used a portion to begin something small but powerful, a non-profit newsroom dedicated to mentoring young women in investigative journalism, especially those from underrepresented communities. She named it the Sullivan Project, after the woman who had reminded her of her worth when she'd almost forgotten it. And through it all, each meeting, each call, each quiet night, feeding hope to the future, Anna stayed grounded by one undeniable truth. She had spoken, she had fought, she had won, and soon she would hold her son, knowing she had given him not just life, but legacy. In the last month of her pregnancy, Anna returned to Austin to be surrounded by family. Under Dr. Rollins's care, she gave birth to a baby boy she named Matteo Miguel Rutherford, keeping William's surname only so that the child would one day know his paternal identity. For better or worse, Matteo was born healthy, with a full head of dark hair that reminded Anna of her own baby pictures. Holding Matteo in her arms for the first time, Anna felt a surge of unconditional love, all the pain, the betrayal, the fear. It seemed distant in that moment. She vowed to devote herself to raising him with integrity, teaching him the values her parents had instilled in her. Her father, Miguel, wept tears of joy upon seeing his grandson, Patricia. Though frail, smiled brightly whenever she held the baby, whispering blessings in Spanish. 2 weeks later, while Anna was still recovering, Harriet stopped by with an envelope in hand. Inside was a short letter from William Rutherford, written from the Federal Detention Center. It was a strange mix of regret and bitterness. He denied some of the accusations, insisted he had truly loved Anna in his own way, and asked for a chance to see his son someday. Anna reread the letter multiple times, her emotions swirling anger, pity, sorrow. She penned a measured response, telling him that if he was sincere, he could start by admitting responsibility and taking steps toward restitution. She didn't promise visitation rights or forgiveness, only expressing that Matteo would learn the truth no matter what. Whether William chose to be a part of it in a positive way would be up to him. She mailed it and resolved not to dwell on it any further. In the months that followed, Anna began freelancing for major news outlets, focusing on corporate accountability stories. She found renewed purpose in her journalism, becoming an advocate for whistleblowers and pregnant women facing discrimination. Mark Underwood continued to publish hard-hitting exposés, sometimes consulting Anna for her insights. Harriet Sullivan returned to semi-retirement, but remained a guiding force in Anna's life, a maternal figure in the professional world. Word spread about Anna's work ethic and fearless reporting. Invitations to speak at conferences trickled in. She accepted only a few, wanting to balance her professional endeavors with the demands of motherhood. She was no longer the timid, starry-eyed girl who fell in love with a charming millionaire. She had become a woman who understood the power of truth, the necessity of courage, and the unbreakable bond of motherhood. And so life moved on. William Rutherford's downfall became a cautionary tale, a fleeting reference in the annals of corporate crime. Meanwhile, Anna's story wasn't just the pregnant wife who got dumped. It was about a woman who refused to stay silent in the face of betrayal, who discovered the strength within herself to stand up against corruption, and who ultimately emerged with something more valuable than all the millions in the world: a child she loved beyond measure, and a soul tempered by fire but unbroken. And that, dear viewers, is the remarkable, harrowing, and ultimately triumphant story of Anna Mendoza, the pregnant wife who was discarded by a millionaire but refused to be silenced. From her humble beginnings in Austin to standing up in a courtroom packed with cameras, she showed that love betrayed can transform into an unshakable resolve for justice. While William Rutherford's empire crumbled under the weight of his own deceit, Anna found her true purpose: mother to her precious son, and fierce advocate for truth. He was the dashing mogul every ambitious entrepreneur wanted to emulate. She was the poised, loyal wife who had stood by him from humble beginnings. No one would have guessed that behind the gated mansion's manicured lawns, betrayal festered like poison. Until one day, in a flurry of financial sabotage, he let his mistress cut off his wife's credit cards. It was humiliating, scandalous, and only the beginning of a whirlwind that would pit powerful business alliances against each other. In a boardroom confrontation that stunned everyone, the CEO himself stepped in, but not in the way anyone expected. Buckle up. This is the story of love, greed, and revenge. Jordan Alberts was not born into luxury. He grew up in a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Milwaukee, where he learned to hustle by selling candy bars door to door at the age of 10. Over the years, Jordan's unwavering determination and charm propelled him into better circles. First at a local startup, then into his own tech company that caught the eye of an angel investor. By the time he was 35, Jordan was a self-made millionaire, a prominent figure on various entrepreneurial boards, and had connections with people like Mark Cuban, Bill Gates, and a few top executives at Google. His wife, Elizabeth Alberts née Wagner, had been with him through everything. They met in college at a small tech entrepreneur club meeting, both bright-eyed and dreaming of changing the world. Elizabeth came from a modest background, too. Her father was a retired auto mechanic, and her mother a homemaker. She'd studied communications with an emphasis on public relations, and it was through Elizabeth's network of contacts that Jordan first gained access to small local pitch events. While Jordan pitched his innovative software for automating small business tasks, Elizabeth made calls, arranged coffee meetups, and tried to capture the interest of potential backers. They married in a little chapel by Lake Michigan. It wasn't a lavish wedding, no star-studded guest list, no fancy reception at the Ritz. But to Jordan and Elizabeth, it felt perfect. A union built on genuine love, unwavering support, and a shared dream of building a life and a business empire together. Over the next decade, they grew from a modest condominium in Milwaukee to a stunning estate in Austin near Lake Travis, with a sweeping view of the water and rolling Texas hills. It was there at a philanthropic event organized by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that Jordan's name landed on the radar of top-level investors. His company's smart automation technology was recognized for its potential to transform not just small businesses, but large-scale manufacturing and logistics. Soon after, Jordan's net worth skyrocketed from a mere $5 million to well over $200 million. For a while, everything was picture perfect. The marriage was strong, their personal synergy unwavering. Elizabeth handled some philanthropic duties, organizing events, acting as a goodwill ambassador for Jordan's brand, and forging new partnerships through her PR background. Their household staff adored them, describing Elizabeth as kind, gracious, and always mindful of the people around her. But money can be a seductive force, and success can open doors to darker temptations. Jordan began attending more exclusive networking events in Beverly Hills, New York, and beyond. Elizabeth was often at his side, but there were times she couldn't attend. Perhaps she was busy finalizing the details for a charity gala, or maybe she was simply burnt out from the unrelenting schedule. It was during these times, rare at first, then increasingly common, that Jordan got close to someone else. Her name was Ava Monroe. She was a rising star in the world of technology law, representing high-profile clients like Tesla, Amazon, and a few top-tier cryptocurrency exchanges. She had a reputation for being ruthless in negotiations, seductive in social gatherings, and unbelievably charming behind closed doors. The rumor mill started buzzing the moment Ava was seen at Jordan's table during a private dinner after a tech summit in Las Vegas. Elizabeth wasn't there. She had chosen to stay in Austin, meeting with a team of female entrepreneurs Jordan was mentoring. A few people whispered about Jordan's visible fascination with Ava, the way he leaned in whenever she spoke, how they clinked champagne flutes with an intimacy that suggested more than just business talk. No one knew for certain how fast or how deep it went, but soon the signs became undeniable. Lavish gifts appeared on Ava's social media, including a diamond bracelet, suspiciously similar to the ones Jordan's company had once gifted important clients. Photos emerged of Jordan and Ava at high-end restaurants in Manhattan, always carefully angled to obscure Jordan's face, though keen observers could still identify him by the sliver of a recognizable watch or the faint reflection in a mirrored wall. By the time the rumors reached Elizabeth, they were no longer rumors, but near-confirmed facts. She felt her chest tighten, her world spinning out of control. This couldn't be real. Jordan had always been a loyal partner. But the evidence was too compelling to deny. She confronted him in the privacy of their Lakeview mansion. At first, Jordan denied everything. Yet denial quickly turned into a half-hearted admission once Elizabeth presented him with photographic evidence, like a skilled negotiator used to controlling deals. Jordan tried to manipulate the situation, insisting that Ava was just a business associate, someone he occasionally had dinner with. But Elizabeth saw right through it. She had always been adept at reading him. A chill settled over their once loving home. Elizabeth, determined to preserve her dignity, demanded they enter marriage counseling, or at the very least step away from high-profile events until they resolved their issues in private. Jordan nodded, providing non-committal answers. He had never liked therapy, never seen the point in discussing feelings with a stranger. He agreed to her wishes on the surface, yet beneath the facade, he continued his involvement with Ava, allowing the illicit relationship to take root. This was the calm before the storm. For soon Elizabeth's sense of betrayal would pale in comparison to the massive financial and emotional blow about to come her way. Weeks passed. Elizabeth tried to focus on her philanthropic work and personal projects, attempting to distract herself from the growing chasm between her and Jordan. When a local charity she sponsored invited her to discuss future donations, Elizabeth discovered something shocking. Her personal credit card was declined. Embarrassment washed over her in front of the unsuspecting staff. She tried another card. Sure, it must have been a glitch, but that too was declined. The staff politely suggested she call her bank, and Elizabeth excused herself with a polite smile, her hands trembling as she left the office. Elizabeth called the bank suspecting fraud or an administrative error. But the bank's representative informed her that both cards had been cancelled the previous week. Under their joint account, they were tied to Jordan's finances and evidently Jordan had authorized the cancellation. It felt like a punch to the gut. Why on earth would Jordan cancel her cards without her knowledge or consent? They had never had major financial disputes. Elizabeth always had access to family funds, albeit responsibly. She dialed Jordan, but the call went straight to voicemail. She sent him several frantic texts. No response. Later that evening, Jordan came home exuding an air of tired disinterest. Elizabeth confronted him the moment he walked through the door. Under the chandelier's glow, which reflected in her tear-filled eyes, Jordan brushed aside her questions with a dismissive wave. "I needed to consolidate our finances," he said, removing his blazer. "You can use the joint checking account for a while." "No big deal, no big deal." Elizabeth's frustration swelled. "You cancelled my credit cards without even telling me what's going on. Are you punishing me for something?" Jordan's eyes flicked away nervously, and that was when Elizabeth realized he was lying again. The next words that came from his mouth were not only shocking, but also laced with a cruelty she never imagined he was capable of. "Ava suggested we revisit some of my expenses. She found that you were spending frivolously. It made sense to limit credit usage." Elizabeth's heart dropped to her stomach. Ava. That woman was now meddling in their finances. As if the affair wasn't enough, Jordan had allowed this mistress to encroach into an arena that Elizabeth believed was sacred, her own household stability. "What is Ava doing reviewing my spending? Since when does your fling get to decide what is or isn't frivolous?" Elizabeth spat tears, threatening to spill. Jordan made an attempt at a calming gesture, but his words only fanned the flames. "She's helping me restructure. Her firm has great insights into corporate finances. This is about the business, Elizabeth. It's not personal." Not personal. Elizabeth recalled how intimately personal their marriage had always been. They built every aspect of their lives together, from small decisions about wallpaper colors to big entrepreneurial leaps that demanded everything from both of them. Now Jordan was shutting her out, consulting Ava instead. In a quavering voice, Elizabeth demanded, "Reinstate my cards. I am your wife. I have a right to our finances, and you know I've never been irresponsible with money." Jordan's face hardened with a new arrogance. "Not until we finalize our restructure," he said, referring to some nebulous plan Elizabeth knew little about. "I'll handle everything in the meantime." That moment, that cold exchange, was a harbinger of the bigger heartbreak to come. If Jordan was letting Ava control such details, what other aspects of their marriage was he willing to let her sabotage? As the days turned into weeks, Elizabeth discovered one more blow after another. The monthly allowance she used to cover household expenses had been slashed without explanation. The staff, including her personal assistant, was laid off. Bills began piling up, addressed to her name, but with no means to pay them aside from groveling at Jordan's feet. Friends and family started to notice. Elizabeth tried to hide her shame. She confided in her sister Caroline, who was enraged at Jordan. "This is financial abuse," Caroline insisted. "You should speak to a lawyer." Elizabeth shuddered at the thought. She still believed they could salvage their relationship, that Jordan would snap out of whatever daze Ava had put him in. Yet a small part of her whispered that maybe Caroline was right. Then came a fateful meeting at a hotel conference suite in Los Angeles, one that Jordan had insisted Elizabeth attend. It was a gathering of major tech moguls, including Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, who were rumored to be there to discuss new tech innovations in global logistics. When Elizabeth arrived, she quickly realized something was off. She saw Jordan in the lounge area, standing far too close to Ava, exchanging hushed conversations. Seeing Elizabeth from a distance, Jordan slipped away discreetly, leaving Ava behind. Elizabeth approached her husband with a forced smile. "I'm here," she said, desperate to maintain composure. "What's the plan?" Jordan gave a curt nod. "There's a closed-door session for the key players only. You'll have to wait outside." In the past, Elizabeth had always been included in these key player sessions as Jordan's partner and PR advisor. The subtle exclusion burned her pride. She swallowed her anger. "Sure, I can wait." After hours of waiting, she found Jordan and Ava laughing together near the bar. As she approached, Jordan's phone buzzed, and he stepped away. That was when Ava turned a chilling smirk on her face. "You know Jordan's a visionary," Ava said, swirling the wine in her glass. "He needs someone who can keep up with him on all levels: business, ambition, excitement." Elizabeth felt her face flush with anger. "I've been by his side for years. We built this together." Ava gave a theatrical shrug. "Maybe in the past. But times change. People evolve. I guess you were too comfortable." Elizabeth clenched her fists, biting back a retort. She was determined not to make a scene in front of such influential people. But oh, how she wanted to lash out, to expose Ava for the home-wrecker she was. Ava flicked her hair behind her shoulder, noticing Elizabeth's agitation. "Things will be better if you accept it," she cooed, as if offering advice to a friend. Jordan's moved on in more ways than one. The finances are just the beginning. Elizabeth's body went cold. She realized in that moment how truly precarious her situation was. Ava was not simply a fling. She was positioning herself as a partner in Jordan's professional and personal life. The credit cards were just one step in what looked like a systematic campaign to push Elizabeth out of everything she and Jordan had built. Still, Elizabeth refused to crumble. She left the event quietly, but her mind churned with rage and heartbreak. It was time for her to take action. She needed to protect herself, her assets, and her dignity. Little did she know that as she plotted her next move, Jordan and Ava were preparing a financial ambush that would push her to the brink. Only fate and an unexpected intervention by a certain CEO would alter the course of their twisted game. In the days after the Los Angeles conference, Elizabeth attempted to consult with attorneys. She picked up a referral from a friend who once worked with a high-profile divorce lawyer in New York. The initial phone calls were sobering, with Jordan's empire being primarily under his name and her credit cards cancelled. She had limited liquidity to hire top-tier representation. Even so, Elizabeth pressed forward. She managed to scrape together some funds from a personal savings account. Jordan had no access to money she had set aside from her early PR consulting days. It wasn't a large sum, but enough to secure a preliminary consultation. During that consultation, her lawyer, Michelle Liu, a bright and empathetic but hard-hitting attorney based in Houston, laid out the hard truth. Financial abuse and infidelity are serious grounds for divorce, Michelle said, scanning through Elizabeth's financial statements. But if Jordan's funneling money and assets into new accounts under his own name, or shifting resources to places you can't see, we need proof, and we need it fast. Elizabeth swallowed. She recounted Ava's involvement, how she was effectively orchestrating the restructuring. Michelle's pen scribbled quickly over a notepad. "You have a right to half of the marital assets, Elizabeth, but it looks like your husband is 2 steps ahead. We must move quickly." The plan was to gather evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing and file a court order to freeze marital assets, ensuring Elizabeth had a fair shot. But as they began drafting documents and rummaging through what records, Elizabeth had an avalanche of shocking details surfaced. Jordan wasn't merely cancelling credit cards. He was transferring stocks from their joint portfolio into an account under his newly formed trust. He had changed the authorized signatory details for a few of their properties, effectively locking Elizabeth out. He was also taking out lines of credit against certain properties, presumably to fund new ventures that, as Elizabeth suspected, involved Ava. The emotional strain weighed heavily on Elizabeth. She couldn't sleep, her appetite waned. Each day felt like standing at the center of a storm. Yet if she thought this was the worst of it, she was mistaken. One evening, after finalizing some documents with Michelle, Elizabeth returned to her mansion to find her keycard didn't work on the electronic locks. Pounding on the door, she shouted for the live-in staff if any were left. Seconds later, the door opened slightly, revealing Ava's face. "Jordan's not here," Ava said icily. "You should call next time." Elizabeth's heart hammered. "This is my home. Get out of my way," she demanded, trying to push past. But Ava slid in front of her, refusing to budge. "He told me you're not welcome here anymore until the legal mess is settled." Ava sneered. "I have every right to ask you to leave." Elizabeth was trembling with fury. "You have no rights here. You're the mistress, not the wife." With a cold laugh, Ava stepped aside and pointed at Elizabeth's luggage haphazardly placed in the foyer. "Jordan left these for you," she said. "He said to pack whatever else you need and let security escort you out if you refuse to leave." Elizabeth blinked away tears, her throat raw with outrage. She was being thrown out of her own home by the woman who had intruded into her marriage. That moment was a cruel epiphany. Jordan had not only cut off her finances, but now he was physically pushing her out of the place she had shared with him for years. Yet in all that darkness, a sliver of light emerged the next morning. Elizabeth received a phone call from a close mutual friend, Marcus O'Donnell, who worked with Jordan at a large tech conglomerate in Dallas. Marcus was someone Elizabeth trusted, an executive who had known Jordan since the early days. He had seen them build the company from the ground up. Elizabeth Marcus said, his tone urgent. "I don't know everything that's going on, but I heard from your staff that you've been locked out. There's a board meeting next week. Jordan wants to finalize some big decisions. If you can get to that meeting and talk to the chairman, maybe you can find some leverage." Elizabeth's breath caught in her chest. The chairman of this particular conglomerate was none other than famed CEO David Hartridge, known not just for his visionary leadership, but also for a strict code of ethics. Over the years, Hartridge had invested heavily in Jordan's business. He was the reason Jordan sat on that board. "He's not the type to meddle in personal affairs," Marcus warned. "But if Jordan's pulling stunts that compromise your share in the company, Hartridge might step in. He's big on fairness and hates scandal." It was the glimmer of hope Elizabeth needed. She thanked Marcus profusely. The plan was simple: attend the board meeting, confront Jordan in front of Hartridge, and present enough evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing to ensure the board and possibly the entire conglomerate would not stand for it. She spent the week gathering documents, bank statements, and text message screenshots that implicated Jordan in unscrupulous financial moves. Michelle Liu helped compile everything into a neat folder. "You need to be prepared for Jordan to lash out," Michelle warned. "He'll try to discredit you in front of the board." Elizabeth nodded her determination, overshadowing her fear. She practiced her speech, reciting it in the mirror of her modest hotel room, where she had temporarily moved. Heart pounding, she told herself that if there was ever a time to fight, it was now. Finally, the day of the board meeting arrived. Elizabeth dressed in a sleek black pantsuit that radiated confidence. She walked into the corporate skyscraper in downtown Dallas, her chin held high despite the knot in her stomach. She spotted Jordan in the corridor, flanked by Ava, and a couple of the board members. As soon as he saw Elizabeth, his expression darkened. "You're not supposed to be here," Jordan said, trying to keep his voice low. Elizabeth raised her chin. "I'm still an investor in your company. I hold shares. So yes, I'm attending the board meeting." Ava stepped in with a condescending smile. "Don't make a scene, Elizabeth. This meeting is for serious stakeholders." "I am a serious stakeholder," Elizabeth retorted, voice steady. "I'm your wife, still legally, and I'm half of this empire's foundation." Behind them, a tall figure approached CEO David Hartridge himself, a man in his 50s with graying temples and a firm handshake. He regarded Elizabeth with polite curiosity. "Ms. Alberts, I presume?" Elizabeth nodded, handing over her invitation papers and a letter from her attorney, which stated that she possessed partial shares. Hartridge studied the documents, then gave a curt nod indicating she was allowed to attend. Jordan shot Elizabeth a glare that spoke volumes. You have no idea what you're getting into. But Elizabeth did. She was here to preserve her dignity, her livelihood, and the legacy she had helped build. The meeting commenced in a sleek conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Dallas skyline. The board members sat around a large mahogany table, exchanging pleasantries about the upcoming quarter's projections. Jordan made a short presentation on a new partnership with a logistics firm, highlighting expansions and new contracts. A few board members clapped. Then came time for open discussion. Elizabeth raised her hand, clearing her throat. "I'd like to address some concerns about the financial structuring Jordan is proposing." She began, her voice reverberating across the silent room. Jordan's face reddened. Ava, seated beside him, tried to intervene. "We should keep personal matters out of board discussions," she said. But Elizabeth pressed on, raising the folder of evidence. "These changes aren't just personal," Elizabeth said. "They could affect company stability. Jordan is funneling resources into a new trust making questionable decisions without transparency. I have documents signed by him with references to Ms. Ava Monroe demonstrating a conflict of interest that could potentially compromise investor trust." A hush fell over the room. Hartridge's brow creased. "Jordan, is this true?" Jordan stood, scrambling for composure. "This is a personal matter. Elizabeth is overstepping her bounds." "She's not," Hartridge replied, his voice sharp. "If there's a conflict of interest that threatens the stability of our partnership, it's very much a board matter." Jordan's eyes darted between Hartridge and Elizabeth. For the first time, he seemed cornered, uncertain how to proceed. Ava shot Elizabeth a lethal glare, realizing that Elizabeth's boldness had forced the topic into official territory. The tension was palpable. Elizabeth's heart thumped so loudly, she was certain everyone could hear it. But she stood her ground. Continuing. "I also discovered lines of credit being taken against marital properties to fund expansions. These expansions could be legitimate, but the details are obscured. I have reason to believe Ms. Monroe is manipulating these finances for her personal gain." Murmurs rippled through the board. A couple members exchanged uneasy glances. Even those who might have sided with Jordan seemed rattled by the magnitude of Elizabeth's accusations. Hartridge steepled his fingers, evaluating the situation. "I propose we recess for 15 minutes. Jordan, Elizabeth, Ms. Monroe, please step into my office." Jordan inhaled frustration etched across his features, but he couldn't refuse the CEO's request, not without causing a catastrophic scene. The three followed Hartridge into a glass-walled corner office, shutting the door behind them. In that tense, enclosed space, the real battle began. Elizabeth laid out her evidence on the polished table before Hartridge. Jordan tried to dismiss it all as a personal dispute, but Hartridge was no fool. He could see the potential for scandal, especially if a partner was using company infrastructure for personal vendettas. Throughout this heated exchange, Ava attempted to deflect blame. She portrayed herself as a legal advisor, merely suggesting financial moves, disclaiming any wrongdoing. But Elizabeth's carefully compiled documents suggested otherwise. Emails, text messages, and proposed legal documents bore Ava's digital fingerprints. Hartridge's expression darkened. "Jordan, this is unacceptable. If these documents are authentic, you've put your personal entanglements ahead of corporate responsibility. I won't allow it under my leadership." Jordan's face went pale. He tried to protest, to label Elizabeth's claims as overblown, but Hartridge had already made up his mind. "Until this is sorted out, Jordan, I'm placing your proposals on hold. We can't move forward with any major financial changes if they're under this sort of ethical cloud." Elizabeth felt a surge of relief, a faint vindication. While she hadn't resolved the core issue of Jordan's betrayal, at least the board wasn't letting him run roughshod over her financial future. But Jordan, cornered and embarrassed, lashed out in desperation. "You can't shut me down like this," he snapped at Hartridge, voice tight with anger. "I'm the one who made that original deal with your conglomerate. You need my innovation." Hartridge stood up, bristling at Jordan's tone. "I'm the CEO, and you've just made me question your reliability and integrity. Watch yourself, Jordan." Ava stepped closer to Jordan, placing a hand on his arm to calm him, but he shrugged her off. "You'll regret this," he warned Hartridge, then turned to Elizabeth. "And you made a fool of me in front of everyone." Elizabeth clenched her fists, refusing to cower. "You did that to yourself," she said, voice trembling with both fear and resolve. Jordan stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Ava followed quickly, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Hartridge sighed, looking at Elizabeth, who was holding back tears. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," Hartridge said. "I'm sorry about your personal struggles, but I have to protect the board's interests. If you need anything, contact my office. I'm not a family court judge, but I won't let Jordan drag the company down." With that, Elizabeth let out a shaky breath. She had achieved a small but crucial victory, yet she couldn't shake the nagging sense that Jordan, humiliated and cornered, was far from finished. She left the skyscraper, stepping out into the bright Dallas sun, uncertain, but determined. Little did she know this chapter was only the start of a far more explosive confrontation, one that would involve security teams, sudden betrayals, and a twist that would bring Jordan himself to his knees. Life outside the mansion was lonely, but Elizabeth was thankful for the reprieve from Ava's manipulations. She rented a small apartment near downtown Austin and used what funds she had left to secure her basic needs, while Michelle continued to press for a financial freeze on Jordan's assets. In the weeks following the tense board meeting, Jordan went surprisingly quiet. No more legal letters arrived. No more credit lines were sabotaged. He didn't attempt to contact Elizabeth, nor did Ava. Instead, it seemed as though they had retreated into some silent fortress, likely strategizing their next move. Elizabeth took advantage of the lull. She reconnected with old friends and mentors, explaining partially at least what she was going through. While many were shocked, they offered support in the form of references, moral encouragement, and occasional leads for a stable job or a business partnership. Despite the heartbreak, Elizabeth discovered a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just a passive bystander in Jordan's world. She had her own capabilities, her own strengths. Slowly, she started consulting for small tech firms, using her communications and PR background to help them craft compelling pitches. It wasn't a fortune, but it was honest work that reminded her she could stand on her own 2 feet. Then one evening, she received a phone call from an unknown number. A crisp, professional voice greeted her. "Hello, Elizabeth. This is Patricia Carlson. I'm an executive assistant at Tesla, working under Elon Musk's leadership team." Elizabeth's heart thudded. She had met Patricia briefly at a tech conference in Berlin 2 years ago, but they'd never exchanged more than pleasantries. "How can I help you?" Elizabeth asked, mind racing. Patricia hesitated. "I might have information relevant to your predicament with Jordan. Let's just say some of our legal divisions have been observing Ava Monroe for a while, and some red flags have come up." Red flags. Elizabeth's curiosity flared. "You're investigating her?" A slow exhale from the other end. "Our major concern is that she's potentially engaged in insider trading, or at least something that veers close to it. She's been known to manipulate powerful men to gain inside info on deals, especially around new technologies. We don't have direct evidence, but we do know that she's heavily involved in your husband's finances. We suspect she might be siphoning resources for her own agendas." Elizabeth's mind reeled. This was bigger than a domestic spat. Ava might be leveraging Jordan's resources and connections to stake her own claims in the tech world. That explained the sudden shifts in finances, the new trust accounts, and the lines of credit. Patricia continued. "We want to bring her down, but we need more information. You, Elizabeth, might be in a unique position to gather that." Elizabeth tapped her fingers on the kitchen counter. "Isn't that something your legal team handles?" A rueful laugh. "Yes, but we need Jordan's direct involvement. We suspect he's unwittingly giving her access to confidential materials through corporate crossovers or joint ventures. If you can help us prove it, we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, protect Tesla's proprietary data, and help you gain leverage in your divorce." Elizabeth considered the offer. It was risky. If Ava was truly up to something illegal, Elizabeth could expose herself to potential backlash, but the lure of finally getting the upper hand was strong. "I'll do what I can," Elizabeth replied cautiously. "But how do I communicate with you about this?" Patricia gave her a secure email address and instructions on how to encrypt files. "And one more thing," Patricia said, before hanging up. "People like Ava are cunning. She'll anticipate your every move. Don't trust phone lines or any device that Jordan has access to. Be careful." Elizabeth thanked her and ended the call. Adrenaline coursing through her. For the next few days, she scoured her digital archives for anything that might hint at insider information. Jordan's old emails messages about collaborations with major tech companies like Tesla or Amazon, documents that Ava might have manipulated anything that showed a trail of questionable activity. She found a few suspicious threads, forwarded emails from Jordan's corporate account that were CC'd to Ava's personal address. Attachments relating to Tesla's Project Next Gen battery were among them, though none of this was strictly proof of wrongdoing yet. Elizabeth compiled what she could and sent them to the secure email Patricia provided. In response, Patricia confirmed that these were valuable leads, but incomplete. "Keep digging," she urged, "and let me know if you get direct evidence of deals or monetary gains tied to these inside details." Meanwhile, Michelle Elizabeth's lawyer was preparing for a preliminary hearing to freeze some of Jordan's assets. She insisted Elizabeth come to court to testify about the financial abuse and the suspicious activities they had uncovered. But Jordan's side surprised them by agreeing to a partial freeze without argument. "That's strange," Michelle said, tapping a pen against the conference table. "Why would he agree so easily?" Elizabeth shrugged, perplexed. "Maybe he realizes fighting me will look bad in front of the board." But Michelle wasn't convinced. "I suspect he's preparing a bigger move. Be vigilant. He may have more leverage than we know." The next morning, Elizabeth received an unsolicited text from Jordan. "We need to talk, face to face." She felt a swirl of conflicting emotions: anger, sorrow, curiosity. But she knew she had to tread carefully. She agreed to meet him in a public place, a cafe near the courthouse, where she could keep the upper hand. When Jordan arrived, he looked tired, as though the weight of his troubles had worn him down. He offered a half-smile, which Elizabeth did not return. "Liz?" He began using the old nickname he once uttered, with affection. Things got out of hand. She crossed her arms. "You think—" He sighed, scanning her face for warmth that was no longer there. "I want to settle this amicably. We can discuss spousal support, property divisions, everything. No need for a long, nasty court battle." Elizabeth let the silence hover. She wasn't naive enough to believe him at face value. "Amicably? Are you telling me Ava is out of the picture?" Jordan's shoulders tensed. "This is about you and me, not her. Look, maybe I got carried away with Ava's advice. She's a brilliant attorney." "She's manipulative," Elizabeth cut in sharply. He brushed the point aside. "Regardless, I'm willing to compromise, but I need you to lay off this insider trading nonsense. It's reckless. You're endangering my reputation." Elizabeth realized then that Jordan knew she'd been snooping into his communications. Perhaps Tesla's legal inquiries had begun reverberating in his circle. She saw the fear in his eyes. He was worried, if not about losing her, then about losing his empire. "You made me the enemy," Elizabeth replied, in a hushed, trembling tone. "When you let your mistress cut off my cards and throw me out of my home." Jordan looked away, shame flickering on his face. "I didn't handle that well. But you have to understand the pressure I'm under with these deals." She waited, letting him squirm. Then he continued. "You'll get a fair share. I promise. I just need you to stop meddling in my professional affairs, especially with Tesla or any other major collaborators. You'll ruin me if you do." A bitter laugh escaped Elizabeth. She thought of all the times she had stood beside him, protecting him, representing him before powerful players, forging alliances that were crucial to his success. Now he was pleading for her, not to ruin him. The irony nearly choked her. Before she could respond, Jordan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and muttered a soft curse. "I have to go," he said, throwing some cash on the table for their untouched coffees. Elizabeth watched him leave, a mixture of pity and disdain swirling in her stomach. It was obvious he was desperate, but was this a genuine attempt at reconciliation, or a ploy to keep her from uncovering more incriminating information about Ava? That question lingered as she returned to her apartment, drained. However, a new email from Patricia waited in her inbox. It contained an attachment, a partial timeline of suspicious trades linked to accounts rumored to be controlled by Ava Monroe. There were large bets placed on Tesla's stock ahead of public announcements. Gains in the tens of millions. This is huge, Elizabeth thought. If she connected these trades to emails or calls between Jordan and Ava, it could be the smoking gun. And while Elizabeth had no intention of going to the feds on her own, Tesla's legal team could bury Ava, and by extension, Jordan's complicity, if he was involved. Elizabeth clutched her phone, anxiety coursing through her. She was walking a razor's edge. One false step, and Jordan might retaliate more fiercely, or Ava might strike. But a successful strike against Ava could free Elizabeth from this entire ordeal, giving her the leverage to secure a fair divorce settlement, or even land Jordan in deeper trouble, depending on his role. She reached for her phone to text Patricia when it buzzed in her hand. A call from an unknown number again. Tentatively, Elizabeth answered. A man's voice greeted her calm and steady. "Hello, Ms. Alberts. My name is Gregory Shaw. I'm part of CEO David Hartridge's legal counsel. He asked me to follow up regarding the situation with your husband." Elizabeth's heart skipped. Hartridge's legal counsel. "We understand from Mr. Hartridge's conversation with you that there might be unethical or even illegal behavior in play," Gregory continued. "The board is concerned about potential liability if Jordan's personal dealings spill into our corporate structure. We can't risk another scandal. Mr. Hartridge would like to assist you discreetly." Elizabeth exhaled slowly. She was on the cusp of powerful alliances forming against Jordan and Ava, but the more people got involved, the more dangerous it felt. Gregory concluded, "We'll be in touch with your lawyer. If you have any crucial evidence, Mr. Hartridge suggests you keep it secure. He wants to avoid a public meltdown, but he's prepared to do what's necessary to protect the company's interests, and that includes supporting you in your legal disputes, if it comes to that." Hanging up. Elizabeth felt a measure of validation. The cracks in Jordan's seemingly untouchable world were growing. Perhaps justice would prevail. Yet as she prepared to finalize the next round of documents for Michelle, a gnawing worry kept her awake at night. Cornered animals are the most dangerous, and Jordan, though once gentle and loving, had shown he could be ruthless when threatened. She braced herself for the storm that was surely coming. The next time Elizabeth saw Jordan in person, it wasn't by chance or a carefully arranged meeting. It was at the headquarters of Hartridge's conglomerate in Dallas. A sudden emergency board session had been called to address urgent corporate matters, and Elizabeth, having been notified by Gregory Shaw, arrived prepared. She walked into the reception area, her heart pounding with anticipation. Michelle Liu had insisted on accompanying her, but at the last minute she was called to handle a crucial filing. Elizabeth went alone, relying on the moral support from Gregory and the knowledge that Hartridge wanted the truth on record. Jordan was already inside the boardroom with Ava, who paced like a clad tiger. When Elizabeth entered, they both snapped their heads in her direction. Ava's glare could have sliced glass. Jordan's face was inscrutable, tense, angry, but also tinged with fear. Hartridge arrived moments later, trailed by a few board members and legal advisors. He wasted no time in stating the purpose of the meeting. "Allegations have come to my attention that Ms. Monroe has been engaging in stock trades leveraging proprietary information from Jordan's company and potentially from our own collaborations. We need to clarify the truth. Now." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Ava's jaw clenched. "This is preposterous," she began. "We demand to see your proof." Hartridge nodded to one of his advisors, who distributed printed documents, timelines of suspicious trades, tied to accounts flagged by Tesla's legal team, along with correspondences that Elizabeth and Patricia had pieced together. Jordan snatched a packet from the advisor. His eyes swept over the page's color, draining from his face. Ava's lips thinned, and for a moment Elizabeth could see the faintest flicker of panic in her eyes. Hartridge pinned them with a stern gaze. "Jordan, you've been a valuable partner. I don't want to see your personal life derail your professional standing. But this is bigger than your marriage. Insider trading is a federal crime. And if Ms. Monroe is using your business resources to pull this off, you're implicated." Ava recovered quickly. She placed a hand on Jordan's arm, her voice smooth. "This is a misunderstanding, David. Anyone can align stock trades with corporate announcements. It's called speculation." Elizabeth decided enough was enough. She stood. "Speculation is one thing, but forwarding private emails, entire business proposals, and preliminary press releases is not speculation. I've seen the messages. You're literally discussing the best times to execute trades based on announcements that hadn't been made public yet." Ava whirled on Elizabeth. "You have no legal standing to claim that. You're just a scorned wife trying to sabotage Jordan and me." Elizabeth's blood boiled. "We'll let the evidence speak. There are even time-stamped emails from Jordan's corporate account sent to your personal email, Ms. Monroe, discussing upcoming expansions and product launches. Then trades were executed in your name or trusts linked to you within hours." A hush followed. Jordan's hands shook slightly. He seemed torn between denial and guilt. After all, the evidence was damning. If he denied it outright, he'd appear foolish. But if he admitted his involvement, he risked criminal charges and the wrath of the board. Hartridge leaned forward, his voice firm. "Jordan, I need answers." "Were you aware of these trades?" Jordan stared at the table, words refusing to form. Finally, he managed, Ava said it was all above board, that it was just normal investing. Ava let out a short laugh, but it sounded hollow. "If you want to scapegoat me, Jordan, think carefully," she warned. "We made certain deals in your name as well. Your signatures are on plenty of documents." The entire boardroom seemed to hold its breath. Hartridge addressed one of his legal advisors. "Have we sent this to the SEC?" "Not yet," the advisor responded. "We wanted to confront them first." Jordan shot to his feet, panic etched on his face. "No need to escalate it. We can handle this internally. If I undo the trades, repay any gains, repay tens of millions of dollars," Hartridge asked. "And that would just be the tip of the iceberg if the SEC digs deeper. This is out of our hands if they launch a formal investigation." Elizabeth watched Jordan unravel. This was the man who had once been so composed, so unstoppable. Now he was cornered, sweat beading on his forehead. Ava, too, looked like a wild animal backed into a corner, eyes darting around the room. At that moment, a building security guard appeared at the door, knocking softly. "Mr. Hartridge, you asked for security on standby," he announced quietly. "Thank you," Hartridge replied, his tone like steel. "I believe we might need you." Ava's eyes flitted toward the door, then back to Hartridge. She adopted a pleading tone. "David, you know me. I've handled legal matters for some of the biggest players in the industry. I would never do anything to jeopardize your trust." Hartridge's face remained stony. "I trusted Jordan, not you. And this evidence suggests you're at the center of a major ethical breach. If you don't have a verifiable explanation for each of these trades and how you obtained insider information, I have no choice but to protect the company from liability." Suddenly, Jordan snapped. Fear twisted into anger, and he pointed a trembling finger at Elizabeth. "You did this. You ruined everything because you couldn't handle that I moved on." Elizabeth steadied her breathing, preparing to reply. But Hartridge cut in calm yet firm. Don't blame her for your poor decisions. You let your personal affair become a corporate liability. Something in Jordan cracked. He lunged toward Elizabeth as if to grab her documents or her phone, an irrational move likely spurred by desperation. But he never made contact. In a blink, the security guard stepped forward and intercepted Jordan, gripping his arms. "Stand down, sir," the guard said, voice authoritative. Jordan struggled, but the guard was a solid wall of muscle. Ava shrieked. "Let him go." "This is a private matter." Hartridge shook his head, anger coloring his features. "You just attempted to assault someone in my boardroom. Security remove Mr. Alberts from the premises." Jordan's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't do that. I'm on the board." "Not anymore," Hartridge said grimly. "I can and I will. You're suspended pending an internal investigation. Once that concludes, we'll determine your status. Now go and take Ms. Monroe with you." A second guard stepped in, guiding Ava toward the door as she protested threatening lawsuits and defamation claims. But her words rang hollow, overshadowed by the looming specter of an SEC investigation. Elizabeth stood off to the side, stunned by how quickly it had escalated from a tension-filled meeting to an outright meltdown. As Jordan and Ava were led out, Jordan craned his neck to shout at her, "You'll pay for this, Elizabeth. Don't think you've won." But the threat carried little weight now. In that moment, Elizabeth felt the mixture of triumph and sorrow that comes with toppling a man she once loved. She hadn't wanted to see Jordan destroyed, only to protect herself and the life they had built together. But Jordan's actions and Ava's ambition had forced her hand. Hartridge dismissed the board members, soon after instructing his legal team to cooperate fully with any investigations. He turned to Elizabeth with a sympathetic frown. "I'm sorry you had to endure this, Ms. Alberts. I assure you we'll handle it lawfully. Whatever personal or marital disputes remain, I hope you find closure." Elizabeth gave him a small nod. "Thank you. I appreciate your fairness." She gathered her documents and left the skyscraper, the bright Texas sun striking her face as she stepped onto the street. The entire drama replayed in her mind. He let his mistress cut off my cards, but the CEO called security on him. She thought a bitter yet satisfying sense of irony spreading in her chest. She wasn't naive enough to think it was over. Legal battles would continue, depositions would be taken, and the divorce was far from final. But in this pivotal moment, she had taken back her power, standing against the storm that Jordan and Ava had unleashed. And for the first time in months, Elizabeth felt a glimmer of hope that she might in the end be free from their tyranny. In the weeks that followed, word spread like wildfire. News outlets picked up on rumors of insider trading linked to a high-profile tech investor, hinting that a major name was under investigation. It didn't take long for the rumor mill to connect the dots to Jordan Alberts and his mysterious attorney-turned-partner, Ava Monroe. Elizabeth watched from the sidelines, inundated with calls and messages from acquaintances, reporters, and sometimes even old college classmates she hadn't spoken to in years. She ignored most of them, preferring to let the legal process unfold without adding fuel to the media frenzy. Jordan, under immense legal and financial pressure, attempted to strike a deal if Elizabeth agreed to keep quiet and not testify against him or Ava. Regarding insider trading, he would give her a generous divorce settlement. The settlement included alimony, a hefty lump sum, and properties that would secure her financial future. However, Elizabeth refused any agreement that required her to lie or withhold the truth if subpoenaed. Nonetheless, she allowed her lawyer Michelle to work out a fair settlement that didn't involve perjury. Eventually, Jordan capitulated, realizing he had to salvage what he could from the marriage and business meltdown. The final settlement granted Elizabeth a significant portion of the assets, the mansion by Lake Travis, ironically, and a sizable share of Jordan's original tech startup. Meanwhile, Ava disappeared from the public eye, her reputation in tatters. Rumors surfaced that she'd fled the country perhaps to avoid legal repercussions, while others suggested she was hiding out in some luxury villa, waiting for the storm to pass. Either way, her days of meddling in Jordan's finances seemed to be over. Elizabeth didn't celebrate Jordan's downfall. She quietly grieved the end of a marriage that had started in love and partnership, yet she also felt relief and a renewed sense of self. She returned to the Lake Travis mansion, deciding whether to keep it or sell. The sweeping views of the water brought back memories, some of which felt like knives to her heart, others that warmed her soul. She began a new chapter in her life, leveraging her PR skills to start a consultancy focused on helping women entrepreneurs navigate both business and personal challenges. She named it Phoenix Rose Consulting, symbolizing rebirth and resilience. To her surprise, she found more joy in championing other women than she ever did, standing behind Jordan at glitzy galas. She kept in touch with Patricia from Tesla, who occasionally updated her on the ongoing investigations. Whether Jordan faced criminal charges depended on further evidence. But at least for Elizabeth, the immediate threat to her assets and well-being had lifted. David Hartridge reached out, once inviting Elizabeth to a dinner with the board, presumably to mend fences. Elizabeth politely declined. She had no desire to relive the tension of board meetings or navigate corporate politics, where her personal life became public fodder. She was grateful for Hartridge's stance, but preferred to build her future away from the chaos. In moments of solitude, Elizabeth reflected on the entire ordeal. She'd once believed that love, loyalty, and shared ambition could conquer anything. Yet she also realized that unchecked power and ego could corrode even the strongest of bonds. Jordan's betrayal had been a painful lesson, but it set her free to discover her own strengths and a life not tethered to someone else's rising star. Yes, heartbreak lingered, and healing was an ongoing process. But Elizabeth found herself waking each day with a sense of purpose. She'd gather with female founders at local co-working spaces, host workshops on media relations, and offer moral support to those feeling overshadowed by bigger players. Each time she saw a spark of confidence ignite in another woman's eyes, she felt her own sense of wholeness return. In time, Elizabeth would finalize the divorce, sign the deeds, and officially start over. A sense of calm settled within her, like the slow, tranquil waves on Lake Travis at dawn. Her story, the humiliating card cancellations, the public meltdown, the mistress's meddling, would become a cautionary tale, one she shared sparingly, only when it might help others. Despite the scars, Elizabeth refused to let bitterness define her. She chose growth, empathy, and a belief that with the right support, anyone can rise from the ashes more formidable than before. Just as Elizabeth thought she had reached stable ground, fate tossed her another curveball. A month after the settlement, Michelle called her urgently. "The feds want to depose you," she said. "They uncovered new evidence Jordan may be involved in deeper crimes, bribery, money laundering. Ava might have orchestrated a network." Elizabeth's stomach dropped. Jordan never mentioned anything like that. "They've found offshore transactions and documents with his signature," Michelle said grimly. 2 days later, Elizabeth sat in a stark federal office, flanked by Michelle and 2 serious agents. They questioned her about Jordan's finances, Ava's role, the card cancellations, and philanthropic events that may have masked backdoor deals. Elizabeth stuck to the facts. She neither speculated nor dramatized. One agent, impressed, said, "You've been very helpful, Ms. Alberts. This case is significant." She left emotionally drained but relieved. She hadn't been dragged down with Jordan, but the storm wasn't over. Whispers followed Jordan was hiding at a secluded ranch, dodging the press. Ava had vanished. More subpoenas were issued. An indictment loomed. Elizabeth stayed focused on her consultancy, channeling stress into helping other women navigate business pitfalls. Her story, once painful, became a symbol of warning and strength. Then came the headlines: Jordan Alberts indicted for insider trading, fraud, and obstruction. Ava was named but still missing. The scandal rocked the tech world. Elizabeth issued a single statement. "I'm saddened by Jordan's choices. I've cooperated fully with authorities and continue to rebuild my life." Eventually, Jordan pled guilty to a lesser charge, offering a tearful courtroom apology. Elizabeth watched from home, tears in her eyes, not from triumph, but quiet grief for the man she once loved. Still, she understood consequences had to follow actions. That night, beneath the soft moonlight over Lake Travis, Elizabeth allowed herself one last cry for the past that died and the hope still waiting ahead. Life has a way of testing our fortitude when we least expect it. Elizabeth Alberts began this journey as a devoted wife, only to see her world upended by betrayal and financial sabotage. Yet what she lost in illusions, she gained in unbreakable resilience. Standing up to powerful forces and calling out wrongdoing isn't easy, but it's sometimes the only way to protect your dignity and your future. If you found this story gripping, insightful, or inspiring, we invite you to be a part of our community. Like this video, share it with friends who need a reminder that courage can emerge from chaos, and subscribe for more real-life drama and empowering tales. Let Elizabeth's story serve as a beacon, no matter how ruthless the betrayal. There's always a path to reclaim your power and build a brighter tomorrow. You too can rise like a phoenix.